Hello and welcome to the 67th episode of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. If you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all social media platforms. Thank you for joining it with us today. I'm your host, Steven, along with co-host Tom for the ride. Tom, how are you doing?
Pretty good. The winter meetings have come to a close. We obviously had big free agent signings, some trades. So all in all, it's pretty good. We'll see how the rest of the offseason shakes out. But it is personal. It is rather cold here in Chicago. Not sure how it is in Denver, but it's part
Mm,
of, it's the winter
it's
time, so
Colorado.
it's
It's
the winter time.
Colorado. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Colorado, yeah, I was talking to somebody at work yesterday, and we haven't had any snow in several weeks. And when we did get that snow, it was a dusting. So we're kind of in a drought here in CO. Um, but hopefully we get some snow because it's not Christmas without the snow. And I know some people don't like snow that much, but for me, come on, you gotta like snow during Christmas time, right? Um, yeah, man. I mean, what a crazy week. First off, we're gonna talk about Soto here. Um, we were talking about it before the show, and the Yankees fans, they got to be the most happiest fans in baseball, right? Right? Um, but yeah, no, they're not very pleased right now. And Juan Soto signed a 15-year deal, right? 15-year deal to the New York Mets, Metropolitans. And I predicted that correctly. I felt that was a team that needed a guy like Juan Soto, that they were looking for a guy like Juan Soto. And guess what? Uncle Steve has that money, baby. So he goes to the Mets. And all of a sudden, it's just hilarious to see all these Yankees fans turn on Juan Soto and blame him for everything. And here he didn't sign with the Yankees. He was traded over to the Yankees, and people forget that. And it was just a 1 year type of thing with the Yankees. And while there was talks about him returning to the Yankees, I think the Yankees offered him like a 16-year deal, something crazy like that. And uh, I don't know. It's funny to see all these Yankees fans, including Michael Kay, who is the Yankees broadcaster on the Yes Network, just all of a sudden now turn on him as well. And it's just this guy, while I will say the contract might be a little bit of overpay, in my opinion, to Juan Soto. You're getting more money than Sohei Ohtani's the most expensive contract, the highest contract in baseball history. I will say though that Juan Soto is one of the best hitters in the game, and it's kind of funny to see all of a sudden Yankees fans think that he's horrible or already rooting for his downfall. So I don't know. I just feel that that's kind of funny.
Well, a lot of people forget he did not start his career with the Yankees. Of course, he is not what they call what's the phrase, born a Yankee, quote unquote. He's not one of their guys. Started his career in Washington, won a World Series at the age of 19, and his career was on the upswing. And of course, when he got traded to the Padres, it just didn't work out there. He wasn't going to thrive there. Or actually, first, let me go back just a second. The Nationals reportedly offered him a $400 million extension. He said no. So of course, when that happens, Mike Rizzo, the GM, the longtime GM, did the smart thing. When you can't sign your star to a long-term deal, you move on from him. And then
Hmm.
it wasn't going to work in San Diego, so he goes to New York. And let me tell you, when people were Yankee fans, again, right here, it's the world's smallest violin. I don't cry me a river, please. Guess what? Because the truth is, what people got to realize when you have Scott Boras as your agent, team loyalty doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing. He was going to go the highest bidder. And the bottom line is Steve Cohen is the richest owner in baseball. I think he's one of, if not the richest owner in American sports. I have to look at it again
Hmm.
in terms of net worth. Actually, no way. The Dodgers ownership, if you talk about their ownership group, the Guggenheim is worth more, but he is the single richest owner, single guy owner in all of sports. Nobody's going to outbid him. The Otani contract is still the richest in terms of AAV at $70 million a year. But the reason it doesn't surprise me that Cohen and David Stern spread it out a little bit to 15 from 10 to 15 years to kind of ease the AAV because there's no deferrals. That contract, from what I read, has no deferrals, unlike Otani, who has a large chunk of it after the contract is over. At the end of the day, Yankee fans, I mean, you're upset about it, but what the bottom line is, like I said, when you have Scott Boras, your agent, there's no loyalty. And the bottom line is he was going to go. You and I agreed on this. I think we both. He was going to stay on the East Coast. I didn't. There was no chance he was going to the after the Dodgers signed Blake Snell. He was not going to the Dodgers.
Mm.
And then of course, Yankee fans, you should be happy. I mean, you lost some offense, but you gained some pitching. Max
Mm.
Fried.
Yeah.
Again, that's another one I'm wrong about. He's not going to the. I picked the Cubs, and either way. But all in all, it was when it hit, it was crazy. And it just goes to show you the industry, the money is going to keep going up. And this is going to add two things that are going to add to the CBA. We talked to briefly. The deferral, there's going to be a limit, I think, on how much you can defer. And then two, there's going to be some kind of salary kind of not cap or floor. There's got to be a floor because you got to increase the competitive spending. But there's going to be some kind of structure around this. It'll be interesting to see how it develops. So, but
Mm-hmm.
we both can agree work stoppage could be coming very, very much so.
Yeah. So after the Soto signing, it was something that we had talked about last week. The dominoes fell. Now it wasn't a huge splash in the winter meetings. It was busy, but not too busy. We saw Tyler O'Neill go to the Baltimore Orioles on a 3-year deal. I think that's an interesting deal. I think it might turn out to be pretty good for the Orioles. I like that move a little bit there. Um, and I'm trying to think of some of the other popular moves that took place. Of course, Tom already iterated the Max Fried signing to the Yankees. It is the largest contract by a left-handed pitcher in Major League Baseball history. So there's that. So again, and the Rockies were one of the first one of the first teams to make a move, Tom, and of course we'll talk about it more in depth. But they got Thairo Estrada on a 1-year deal worth roughly about $4 million. So that's in my opinion, a pretty decent contract for a guy that has had good numbers in the past. Now did suffer with injuries in 2024 and did not have good numbers, but yeah, and then and one of the biggest ones in the National League West, which comes to mind, is Willie Adames to the Giants, and that was a 7-year deal. And what's so interesting, Tom, and for those who are watching, and I know a lot of Rockies fans will recognize this number: 7 years, 182 million for Willie Adames. And if you want more clues, that's the exact same amount of money that is going toward Chris Bryant. When Chris Bryant signed here in the spring of 2022, it was for 7 years, 182 million, I think. So there's that. Yeah, so Juan Soto deal, 15 years to the Mets. Michael Conforto, of course, he went to the Dodgers, right? That's not too surprising. Blake Trinan re-signed with LA. That was pretty predictable. I knew that Trinan was going to try to go back to a contending team like the Dodgers. Jordan Romano goes to the Phillies. What's another one? Carson Kelly went to the Cubs. Somewhat of a minor move there. Alex Cobb to the Tigers, and then Mike Tauchman to Tom's White Sox. Former Rockies legend.
Also, you also got Andre Simenes from the Guardians to the Blue Jays.
I thought that was a very interesting trade. I really don't know because I feel like I think a lot of Guardians fans really liked him, and they got good players in return. Don't get me wrong. It kind of shocked me a little bit, and so now they're kind of looking at themselves and saying, who's going to be our starting second baseman? Is it going to be a trade piece? Are we going to make another trade, or are they going to go to former Rockies top prospect or one of the Rockies' best prospects, Juan Brito, in the Nolan Jones trade? That's a possibility. And I really like Juan Brito. I was looking at a Guardians fan page on Instagram today, and I was looking at Juan Brito. I'm like, man, I really miss him because I know Bill Schmidt really liked him, but we had to sacrifice a really good prospect for Nolan Jones in 2022. So,
well, I think, just real quick, I guess I could say about that. The Guardians are like the Rays. They are not afraid to restructure things, and they know when to get rid of typically the right time to part ways with a young, or you could say aging veteran. And of course, the big ones, White Sox, Garrett Crochet. I was no surprise he went to Boston. I will say on record, 2 years of control left, one of the best starting pitchers in the game. Had to happen. And the Red Sox, they got to start. I think they're not. who is this? Somebody made a comment about this. They're not at the point where they need to start spending big money on free agents, but they should start improving the roster.
Mm.
And instead of giving up whatever it's going to cost to get Corbin Burns or the 280 took to get Max Free, they decided let's pivot and get Garrett Crochet because he's only going to cost about $4 million in arbitration. So
Mm.
why not? And I don't. I think it's a pretty good deal the White Sox got in return from the 4 prospects. So we'll see. But again, prospects are prospects unless it's only rankings and titles until of course they develop into major leaguers. So
Mm.
let me see. There was one more minor signings. Gary Sanchez went to the Baltimore Orioles. Oh yeah, I think we talked about this one. Nathan Eovaldi went back to the Texas Rangers. Uh, did we talk about Chapman to the Boston Red Sox? That's going
I
to be a
don't think
strange.
so.
That's
That's
just
another
that's going to be that is going to be. I got to tell
weird
you,
to see him in
considering
a Red Sox uniform.
it's just even odd for the fact that that would not that he's not the first Yankee or Red Sox to wear both guy to wear Yankee and Red Sox uniforms, but just going to see strange given the
Mm.
heat he took from Red Sox fans over the years. He's going to be wearing their uniform now.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Shane Bieber, that's another one. Going back to Cleveland,
Yep.
That was one that I could see him going somewhere else, but I mean Cleveland, they could definitely still use pitching. I mean they need guys that can still be in that rotation. I mean Cleveland's not going anywhere with Stephen Bowe as their manager. I really like their season. I really like their team. They're built on pitching, and why not bring back Shane Bieber? And I think he's a staple part of that rotation, man. I don't think they could afford losing him. And while they could have gone after Corbin Burns, if something were to happen to Bieber where he goes out in free agency, it just makes sense for Bieber to go back there. But yeah, so it was an active winter meetings. Definitely a lot better than last year because I tweeted this out about a week ago. Last year was just horrible. It was a horrible winter meetings, and not to mention a couple days after we got that big signing of Otani, and it was a signing that a lot of us Rockies fans didn't like, and um, yeah, it was just a bad winter meetings last year. Where this year, completely opposite. It was a much better winter meetings, and there's still a lot of players available. Alex Bregman, Anthony Santander is still out there. Um, Jack Flaherty, I think, is still available. So there's a bunch of free agents that are still waiting to be signed. Of course, Corbin Burns, the number one pitcher left, he still has to wait to sign. So we'll wait on him. But Tom, we have to talk about Tuesday. So Tuesday was a day we were nervous about. I was nervous about, but I was also confident. I was like, "Hey, the Rockies have a 50% chance, roughly, to get a top 2 pick." They had I think, a 94% chance of landing a top 6 pick, and so I was like, "Hey, I feel like we're gonna get a top 2 pick. But if we do fall, we're 100% gonna get a top 4 pick." And so I watched the lottery and goes on, and when the thing that shocked me the first off was the Marlins. They fell extremely far back. They were tied with the Rockies for the number 1 overall pick. They were at number 2. They fell all the way down to 7. That's 5 spots. That's a big jump. And my first reaction was like, dang, I really feel bad for Marlins fans out there because I know a lot of them didn't really like their first round pick last year, PJ Morlando, who I like. But Marlins fans, they've had it. They've had a bunch of stuff happen to them over the last couple of years, shakeups in the front office, and a bunch of players getting traded over the last several years with Stanton, Yelich, Azuna, Gallen, who was a part of who was a Marlins pitcher at one point. And Alcantara, what about him? Where is he going to stay a Marlin? Are the Marlins going to trade him? Can he stay healthy? So I feel bad for the Marlins. But anyways, we went on, and when the Rockies were announced at 4, my heart kind of sank. Not gonna lie, I was like, dang, the Rockies. They had a really good chance to get. This was their year, Tom, to get the number 1 pick. They had the best odds in the entire lottery to get that first overall pick. But I was disappointed. But as we mentioned on our story, and we both agreed that, hey, if the Rockies get a top 5 pick, we're still going to get a solid player because if you look at the previous 3 to 4 drafts, you're looking at the top 10, top 15 guys in the draft prospect list. Those are really good players, and it's not like the Rockies are missing out on, a potential star player, right? I mean, I noted that Chase Dollander was selected at 9 in 2023. And here Dolander, heading into the draft lottery, the previous winner was number 1. So there's a possibility that some of these guys can fall. And talking about Ethan Holiday, um, you know, I don't imagine him falling at all, but there's a chance that Ethan Holiday could fall if his spring does not go as planned. And if there's a prospect that's lower on the list, just all of a sudden jumps up. Um, so that could potentially happen, but I would imagine that the Nationals are probably going to get Ethan Holiday, which is a bummer. But at the same time, though, happy for those two guys of Jackson and Ethan Holiday because they'll probably be playing very close to one another, right down the street, right? You know, Baltimore and Washington. Um, so I was bummed, but right now I'm okay with it. I'm excited to see where the Rockies are going to go with this. Bill Schmidt was talking about it to Patrick Lyons and DNVR, Christian Size, talking about how they're going to be looking at pitching for the draft, and I think that's the right move. The Rockies, they've gotten a bunch of outfielders over the last few years in the draft, and then they got Dolander in 23. But for the Rockies, they need more pitching, right? Because what if Dolander goes down in the future for an injury, or Sullivan or Palmquist? You're going to need a guy that's a backup in the minor leagues to come up. And so I'm okay with pitching, but at the same time, though, you do want to get the best player that's available in the draft more than need in some cases. So I don't know, Tom. What did you think? Because for me, I was bummed, but now thinking about it, it's like, it's not a huge deal, to be honest with you. We're still getting a top 5 pick.
The one story I'll think back to is back to 2008 draft lottery in the NBA when the Bulls everyone in Chicago went up in arms when the draft lottery got the number 1 overall pick. We ended up picking on the hometown kid, Derrick Rose, and rest is history, youngest MVP in NBA history. But unfortunately, that first injury just derailed that story. But I kind of had flashbacks, and if we got the number 1 overall pick for the Rockies, again, it would have been like the whole city of Denver just up in our whole state of Colorado just up in arms, including me. Not in Colorado, but it's I always say this, when it comes to the draft, regardless of which sport, you can have the number 1 overall pick, but that doesn't guarantee you're going to get A, the best player, or B, the player that's going to have the best career. I mean, there's a chance that when you get the number 1 overall pick, he may not even reach the major leagues. It's happened many, many times. Not everybody is going to end up number 1 overall pick like Bryce Harper and go on to have the career he has and will have until the day he retires, which I think he will one day make the Hall of Fame. Knock on wood there for Bryce Harper. Anyway, like I said, like you and I talked about in the pre-show meeting, looking at Jim Callis and Jim Callis's rankings. He has the Rockies most likely picking one of the top 2 pitching prospects, which, depending which list you look at, is Jamie Arnold, the left-handed starting pitcher from Florida State, or Tyler Bremner, the right-handed starting pitcher from UC Santa Barbara. I like looking at his draft analysis of both pitchers. I like both of them. I do like Jamie Arnold a little better because he has more of a track record of success as a starting pitcher. But according to what Jim's personal analysis are, you can go back and forth in either one of those. So the Mariners do have the 3rd pick, and he does have them picking Tyler Bremner. So it could end up being one or the other. I honestly, it would shock me if Ethan Holiday and Chase Laviolette from the outfielder from Texas A&M end up not being number 1 and 2. Like you said, it would be rather cool if, first of all, Ethan does get picked number 1 overall, and he and Jackson were number 1 overall picks. And again, Maryland, Washington, they're right near each other, so it's kind of an interfamily thing. So when Scott Boras needs to negotiate their contracts, he doesn't have to travel far. So good for him, except for when he has to fly from California down to the East Coast to negotiate. But anyway, back to the point. It's not a bad spot. The Rockies are in a good position. We would have loved to have had the number 1 overall pick and have our choice of whoever we wanted to, which probably was going to be Ethan Holiday. But at the end of the day, it's still a high pick. It's in the top 10. It's unlike the White Sox, who finished with the worst record in the history of modern day baseball, and they have the best they can get is the number 10 pick. So, like the point I was trying to make there, it could be worse.
Yeah, and so at least we're not Miami, right? We fell where we could have fallen just number 7. And I will say this: so there's this website on Google. You can type it in, MLB mock draft, where you can basically do a simulator of drafts. And I did that the day before the draft lottery. And out of 10 tries, I think the Rockies got the number 1 pick once or twice. And the majority of the time, though, they got the number 3, number 4 pick. Now, there was 1 or 2 times where the Rockies got the number 7 pick, and I'm like, oh boy. So there's a chance the Rockies fall all the way down to 7. So I feel like it was either going to be the Marlins or Rockies get the number 7 pick. Unfortunately, it was the Marlins. So the Rockies, they got a break there. So meh, we'll take number 4. I mean, it's just 1 slot down from last year. We'll take it. Um, so yeah, it was a weird overall a weird day. But yeah, I hope Ethan Holiday doesn't necessarily fall. I'm not trying to say that, oh, I hope he doesn't do well, because I love the kid, and of course, as a Matt Holiday fan and growing up as a Matt Holiday fan, I hope that he does extremely well. I hope Jackson does extremely well. But it would be cool to see that, if Jackson Holiday does fall, and I think there's still a shot that he could fall to the Rockies if something were to happen. But for him, I hope that he stays number 1 and he goes to Washington. But again, we'll have to wait and see. There's still several more months. I mean, we still have a half a year to go, a little bit more than that, before the draft takes place next year in Atlanta. It's kind of weird now, just thinking of that. The All-Star game is going to be Atlanta, where it should have been in 2021, but it's debatable. We do have a comment here from Mr. Vallejos on X. And if you are watching or watching on YouTube, or even if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts in the future, head on over to YouTube or X and just let us know. Give us your questions, give us your comments, your concerns. Mr. Vallejos comments and says, "See any more trades or signings for the Rockies, or are they set in our eyes?" And I will say, I think the Rockies are pretty much set, Tom, because we were talking about this, and I guess we'll transition into our next segment, is Thairo Estrada. So about a week ago, a report from Thomas Harding came out saying that the Rockies were looking for a second baseman. They were in the market for second base, and a lot of Rockies fans were scratching their heads and wondering, "Wait a second, didn't we already get Owen Miller and Kyle Farmer?" Yes, but if you realize Owen Miller is not on the 40-man roster, and therefore that kind of tells me that while he may get a spring training invitation, it's more than likely Owen Miller will probably be a AAA player for the Rockies, so he will not be on the roster whatsoever. Kyle Farmer, this was a conversation that was talked about in the winter meetings. Bill Schmidt talked about it. And I was kind of shocked. I told Tom this, but I was kind of shocked that the Rockies don't plan on having Farmer as a starting second baseman. Where originally I was like, oh, yeah, Farmers are, second baseman, fill in second baseman for Amador before he comes up and when he's ready. But no, Farmer is going to be a utility guy. He's going to be mixing in at first base, second base, third base, even. And apparently he can even play catcher, which I thought was very interesting. And so I was like, oh, okay. And now the Thairo Estrada signing makes sense. It's a 1-year deal, and he's roughly making $4 million a year. And he does have, I believe, a team option for 2026. I don't imagine that getting picked up, because I feel like Amador will be ready by that point. But getting back to Mr. Vallejo's point, I think the Rockies are pretty much set in terms of lineup and just depth where they're at right now. I think they have it. Now they still could get somebody on a minor league deal soon, maybe coming into spring training, kind of like what they did last year with Bradley Zimmer. That type of signing. The Rockies are always funky with that. So, but I think in terms of lineup wise, they're set. Now the Rockies did mention that they are still looking for a veteran relief pitcher. I think that's going to be coming up soon. I think the market is usually right after the winter meetings. The market is starting to warm up after the big moves have been made. Then teams start making their final picks, and they want to get ready for spring training, because I mean, spring training is only 2 months away, Tom, right? So you want to make your decision somewhat quickly, and you got to set your home preparations. You got to know where you're going to be playing at in the spring training. You want to get everything prepared. So the Rockies, they're going to be looking for a veteran right-handed pitcher. Supposedly, it might be a lefty, but I've heard right-handed pitcher to help out the younger guys in that bullpen. I'm excited for the young Rockies bullpen next year. I think Bill Schmidt talked about it. of how solid it was late in the season last year with Halverson, Peralta, GV, a bunch of those guys, Vodnik, even though he made his debut a couple years ago in 2023. I'm excited for it, and I do think that it's a good idea for the Rockies to go get somebody to help out Kinley as well, because Kinley is the oldest guy, I think, in that bullpen. So why not get a guy? I was thinking Blake Trinan, but he's off to LA. But one guy that I think I mentioned last week on the show was Luke Jackson, former Brave and former Giant. I think he would do well. I think it would be nice to have somewhat of a reunion between Vodnik and Jackson. I'm not sure if they were ever teammates at one point, maybe in the minor leagues, but I think it would be kind of cool to have a Luke Jackson type of guy that's not too old, that's right around 29, 30 years old, that can help out in that bullpen for the Rockies. Other than that, Mr. Vlahos, I think the Rockies are pretty much set. Tom, what do you think? For me, I feel like they're pretty much set for next year. If they have to make any other moves, it's really depth purposes, but they've already kind of done that. So I would probably say the only move that they have left is getting that veteran pitcher for the bullpen.
Well, yeah, I mean, on our last episode, I did give 5 predictions of players I could sign. I guess the 3 position players I did make light of are moot at this point with the Estrada assigning. Basically, also, as we talked about pre-show, Owen Miller is not on the 40-man roster. I think, as you and I talked about, he is going to be minor league depth. Kyle Farmer is going to be the 5th infielder. I'll go back to the 2 pitchers real quick and reiterate for Mr. Vallejos and everybody else listening and watching. If you want to go bargain shopping for the right-handed pitcher that you're talking about for a starter, Mike Soroka is an option. He's only going to cost a market value of about $3 million. He did have an unfortunate, not so great season with the White Sox this year, and he did, of course, he had success in Atlanta until he got injured. So if you want to take on a reclamation project and see if he's healthy, that's one. I do like John Means, the former lefty Baltimore left-handed starting pitcher, who does, I think, yes, he did throw a no-hitter for the Baltimore Orioles. He was looked at to be a veteran top of the half rotation, probably a 3rd starter, given that I don't know what they're going to do with Corbin Burns. I do like him. Just browsing, if you want me to give you a trade for a possible reliever, if I had it my way, for given all the relief pitchers that are on the market right now and are free agents in 2026, again, if I could dream, I would love to have Ryan. I would love to have Devin Williams. That's again, that's a huge stretch there, but also, I know this is also a big stretch. The Astros are shopping Ryan Presley, so if I had no budget restrictions, I would like to see if entertain a trade for Ryan Presley, considering what's his name? Oh God, I'm blanking. What's Josh Hader is now officially the closer, considering how much money they gave him last offseason. But I'll just pick. Let me see. Let me just do a quick browsel. This is one guy. He now pitches. He used to pitch for the Yankees. Maybe you can. I did like Chad Green when he was in New York. So he right now is going to be a free agent with the Toronto Blue Jays in 2020 after the 2025 season. So yeah, that's an option right there if you wanted to make a trade. Or I can't believe, I wonder if he's still gonna be, I'm not sure if he's recovered from Tommy John, but there's Sir Anthony Dominguez. You got Freddie Peralta, who is obviously a 30-year-old starter in Milwaukee. I'm not sure how extensive what their future is with him. So again, those are just spitballing some ideas. But to your point, I think the Rockies aren't going to add. It would shock me if they add anybody of impact, considering I don't know what the payroll right now, how much Bill Schmidt has left with flexibility. So we'll see. I mean, like you said, there's just going to be depth pieces at this going this one forward, along with MILB deals. So,
yeah. Well, going back to one of the things that I was really excited about talking about tonight is Thairo Estrada, because I was talking to Tom right before we started. But at first I was, it's not like I didn't like the move. I was like, okay, Thairo Estrada is decent. But if you look at the numbers, and I'm trying to see if I can pull it up here.
I've got them right in front of me.
Okay, yeah. Make sure that this is muted. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to pull this up on the screen, and if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, you're going to have to head on over to our YouTube to check, or Twitter/X to see this on screen here. So let me pull it up here on on screen. So Christian Sides over at DNVR, shout out to him. But he tweeted this out saying that a good note that even during the worst season in 2024 when Estrada, he hit 348, 406, 565 over 24 games in Colorado. And Tom, I mean, this could be a sleeper type of pick for the Rockies here. Not pick, but signing. And I tweeted about it just the other day, and I think it's a possibility that maybe the Rockies got a good player here that they can have while Amador is still getting ready in Double A. And you never know. I mean, he struggled with injuries, and your worst concern is that he does not do well. He still gets injured for the next year. But this is very much like a construction project on a player, if you want to call it that, on Thairo Estrada, to see if he can rebound. I mean, he was a decent ball. I mean, a really good defender, right? I mean, a Gold Glove type of defender at second base. Offensively, maybe a little bit better than Brendan Rodgers. Now, you do look at his strikeouts, strikes out quite a bit. But you do kind of like Thairo Estrada, man. And I think that the Rockies, they got a kind of a guy. And I think the Yankees were on him, too, apparently. There was a few other teams, during the winter meetings that were on Thairo Estrada that were interested in him. I know the Yankees were in on him at one point. So I think the Rockies got a good player in Estrada, at least to hold over till Amador. And I was texting somebody this the other day, but I would imagine, I would not be shocked if, during the middle of the season, Amador all of a sudden gets hot. He's ready, whether it's in Double A or Triple A. And even though I would love to see Amador come up here as soon as possible, I still think Amador needs to see AAA action. Like Romo, I just don't like seeing hitters jump Double A to the major leagues, where I've talked about it before on this podcast, where pitchers, I'm okay with Rockies pitchers jumping Double A to the majors. I'm okay with that. Feltner did it, and he did okay. He didn't even play one single inning of AAA ball when he got called up in 2021, I believe, at the end of the season when I think Gomber was injured. So Amador, I'm not, I think the Rockies are doing the right thing by taking their time with Amador, letting him develop, and letting Estrada get some action at second base, see what he's got. And I think if his numbers say that the way they are, I think he's going to do well with the Rockies. I don't think he's going to be an all-star, but I think he could definitely hit well. And he has good speed too. I mean, he can steal some bags. He has a stolen base record on his record book. So, he can steal some bags. So maybe the Rockies, again, like I said, Tom, maybe they got a pretty good, decent second baseman here at the winter meetings here.
Well, in terms of position usage, I think it's going to be encouraging to some, if not a lot of people out there. By a wide margin, his most experience is at second base. At the major league level here, he does have some position versatility. He actually has seen 2 innings of action in center field in his major league career. It's just a funny little fun fact there for everybody to enjoy. He's had 4 starts. He's played 13 games at third base, 27 in left field. And then, of course, back to the infield. He's played 92 games at shortstop, and of course, his most experience is 351 games at second base. So he is good. So his primary usage is going to be at second base. I'm sure he'll play. If there's a day where Tovar needs a day off from his feet, I'm sure he'll fill in just fine. But as you pointed out, and we talked about in the pre-show meeting, I mean, if you want to look at it, he is going to probably be the opening day second baseman now that I think about it. But, in 2022 and 2023, he did have 1.8 and 2.3 WAR respectively. In both those seasons, he had 14 home runs, so he's got some pop in there. He had over 20 doubles in both seasons. He had 2 triples in both seasons. Like I said, the one concern I have, he walks an okay amount. It's not great. It's not good. It's okay, which is fine. But the one concern for me is strikeouts. In 2023, in 120 games, he had 120 strikeouts, so it's a strikeout per game. It's not exactly encouraging. He did have a tough year last year because I struggled with injuries. He only played 96 games. But yeah, given it's a low risk, high reward, they can flip him at the deadline if they choose to. I mean, let's say the deadline rolls around. It's like, okay, let's flip Thairo Estrada. Dale Amador, you're ready. Second base is yours.
Mhm.
So you could seemingly say it is a bit of a transition, but I do agree with you. Amador needs seasoning. He's going to see time in AAA. He'll be the Albuquerque everyday second baseman. Maybe he'll play shortstop once in a while. But overall, it's one of those what I have to call, I guess you could say, a transition at the position. You're going from Brendan Rodgers to Estrada and hopefully to Amador to then create the hopefully 5 to 7 year up the play, double play combo of Tovar and Amador. Fingers crossed there on that.
Mm.
Hopefully it's those two.
Yeah.
But and again, Shunk will see some action, I think, this year. I'd like to see him get more at bats. I mean, you and I can, and anybody out there can agree to disagree on how many at bats he should get or how much he will get. I just think there's something there for him. He is it is kind of cool that he and his family do follow us on social media. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. But and I do still love that catch he made. Where was it in Hartford or was it not in Albuquerque? He made that toward the wall there.
It might have been Albuquerque.
I think it was Albuquerque. You're probably right. But
Yeah.
altogether, like you said, I think again Estrada is a good pickup for us. I don't think they're going to go after the two guys who I thought who are my second baseman picks who they could send off the bargain bin. So Madrigal and Frazier are probably not coming to Denver, but it's okay. I think Estrada is a better choice anyway, given the day. And it is I did not know the Yankees were in on him, but either way, he chose Denver.
Yeah. So you like that. Thank you, Estrada. Also, this comes up with a name that I don't know why we didn't mention this earlier. Roki, the Roki guy. Whatever his last name is.
Sasaki.
There you go. So Roki should be Rocky. Get it? So there has been talks about Sasaki with the Rockies and everything, and there were conversations, and one of the first conversations during the winter meetings was that Wolf, who is the representative for Sasaki, had a conversation with some of the Rockies beat writers and everything, and all that, and apparently the Rockies were one of the first three teams to contact Roki. And there were different reports of saying, Rocky's looking for a team that has had good success, good pitching development over the last several years, but he would also be interested in signing with a smaller market team. And then the Rockies world went crazy, and I don't know, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be something to watch, and you're going to want to stay tuned to Major League Baseball, to the Rockies R page for any more Rocky stuff and Rockies news, but especially for Roki, we want to see him as a Rocky. So, fingers crossed, we need to do a hashtag or something like that. Okay. And I know, Blake Street Banner, they were doing something cool over there. So just go check them out. They made a cool post to bring over Roki over to Colorado. But I don't know, Tom, I don't know if he would, I think it would be fun to have him here in Denver. It's just the question is, can he pitch at Coors Field? And this is something that the Rockies have never really had before. They've never had a Japanese starting pitcher at Coors Field. They've never really had it. Now they've had international guys from Asia or Japan. Komori Sungwon Oh is one. However, I think he was Korean, if I'm not mistaken. But they've had guys and they've had good success. I mean, Kazuo Matsui in 2007, he was our starting second baseman, right, in the playoffs, and they've had international guys do well, and so maybe Roki would do well at Coors Field. Again, he has a nasty forkball, very similar to Cody Isenga, who has a nasty forkball as well. So it's just, who would not like to see Roki as a Rocky in Colorado? I mean, I would love to see it. And plus, it's just like this guy was born to be a Rocky, if you get it. So I don't know, Tom. Where do you think Roki could land? I know a lot of people are saying Dodgers because of Ohtani, but again, there were reports saying that he was talking about how he would be okay playing with a team that doesn't have a Japanese player or an interpreter, that he would be completely fine playing with just random players, really. I mean, that kind of shocked me, because usually you see a lot of Japanese players, want to go to a team that has, Japanese teammates, right? Yamamoto with Ohtani, and a lot of people suspect that, this guy's going to go to the Dodgers because of those two guys. But I don't know, man. I mean, there's a case where Roki signs with a random team. Maybe the Rockies could be one of those teams, Tom. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I know that. Well, first of all, Sasaki's agent Joe Wolf. Just for anybody's reference, he's also the agent for Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story. So
Mm.
again, there is a Rockies connection. Bill Schmidt in the Rockies front office does have a pretty good relationship with Joe Wolf, so it's not like it's completely out of the question in terms of having that familiarity in the negotiation. Um, I think it'd be awesome. Again, we haven't had a Japanese pitcher, either starter or reliever, just sign right out of the gate to start their career with us. Um, to your point, I mean, players. I don't think it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't join where a Japanese player is already established. I mean, you look at going back a couple years, Dice came out to Zaka to the Red Sox, and you think about Kosuke Fukudome here in Chicago to the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what's his name? Sayang,
Kodai Senga.
Koda Senga, thank you. That's in New York, and then
Yeah.
um, Sasaki, not Sasaki, the Cubs outfit. I can't remember his name.
Suzuki.
Suzuki, thank you.
Yeah.
And of course,
Suzuki. Yeah.
and of course, Ichiro Suzuki coming over
Yeah.
to Japan to the Mariners when nobody's
Yeah.
there. Again, it's not as I mean everybody's pointing to the Dodgers, but then again, I think their rotation's already set with again Yoshinobu and Otani looking to rejoin the rotation. Um, it would be awesome. Again, it is kind of interesting with Sasaki. He's only 22 years old. When Otani first debuted in the majors, he was 23. So he is on the younger side in terms of Japanese players. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was 26 last year. Ichiro was 26 when he came. Typically, I can't remember what the rule is or how the posting works with Japanese players, but typically they do play a certain number of years in Japan before they start posting to play in Major League Baseball. I have to look up the rules again. Maybe I'll do it if at a later podcast. But it would be awesome. And to your point, he have to worry about pitching at altitude. I do think the strategy is going to be with whatever team he joins. He is not planning to go to the major leagues. I think a team has said he's not planning to go to the majors right away. I think Joe Wolf has made that clear. He wants to start like a normal prospect and work the trajectory up. But again, we'll see. It would be really awesome. If people think it's crazy that the Rockies are going to make their presentation pitch to Sasaki, here's the funny one for you: the White Sox are actually planning on making a pitch to him. Imagine. So if you think if people think it's crazy for the Colorado Rockies to make a pitch to a big international free agent starting pitcher, the worst team in the modern era of baseball history is going to make a pitch to him too. So crazier things have happened here, everybody. But again, I can't remember. I can't even recall the last time the Rockies had a really solid split finger pitcher in to pitch for us. We'd have to look it up. So that would be interesting to know. But I do love the splitter because the thing about it is it's a lock. You lock your wrist and you want to put little spin on it, so it just goes in looking like a fastball. It just dips out of nowhere. I mean, you want some great ones? Look at Shohei Ohtani's or an old Yankee White Sox pitcher, Jose Contreras. He had not a split finger, but called a forkball. It's very similar where you spread your fingers out. Watch his. It's a great pitch, and I'm not sure how it would translate well to Coors Field. I'd have to look at the data on it. But again, real quick, if he did sign with us, that would be just fantastic. And again, that would be a great addition to a potential to the Rockies rotation.
Yeah, you definitely give the Rockies some more wins there, and if the Rockies want to get back to where they want to go, they gotta have solid pitching. And I think I saw somewhere that if a team or whatever team signs him, it would be a minor league deal because he's technically an international free agent, right? So he would have to basically be considered as an international prospect. So whenever the international draft happens or what they want to happen or like the signing period that usually happens in January, um, that he's going to be basically paid as an international prospect. But and it's going to be a steal for whoever gets him. That's why he's arguably one of the best pitchers on that list for free agents. So it would be cool to see him come in Colorado. But somebody was saying also too that he wants to be with a team that has had good success in recent years. And well, unfortunately, the Rockies haven't had good success. But you never know. We've seen crazier things, and one thing that really caught my attention was apparently the Athletics were one of the highest bidders for Max Fried, and here they got Luis Severino, and all of a sudden now they're starting to spend at least some money or flirt with that. So again, it's a weird situation, but hey, we've seen weird stuff happen. What you don't want to do is overpay for a guy, and Sasaki would be again a minor league type of signing to where you wouldn't be spending a whole lot of money, but you'd be paying him as a top prospect, basically, if that makes sense. Because, if you look at regular draft prospects, you're giving them like $1 million, right? That large contract. Usually your number one pick is the most money you're giving money to. And so Sasaki would be getting a bunch of money. Now, granted, it would be as much as money as you would get or give to a regular MLB player. But that's why Sasaki is being so coveted right now by almost every single team in baseball. So again, it's going to be fun to watch where he goes. Fingers crossed. It would be awesome if he comes to Colorado. And I think a lot of people would be like, hey, the Rockies, they're trying. They're trying. But for the Rockies to say, hey, we're really trying, they're going to go get out and get Sasaki. And for them to call about Sasaki, that's promising news for Rockies fans. It should be that the Rockies, they're trying to get better. They're trying to improve. It's not like, oh, we haven't talked to anybody. No, they've talked to Sasaki. They've talked to a bunch of other, teams about different players. They got Thairo Estrada, off the free agent market, who I think could be an underrated signing, right? So the Rockies, they're not sitting on their hands and knees at this point and saying we give up. No, they're trying to build that depth so that they can improve and get more pieces and build their free agent market in the next couple of years so that they can add more players onto the roster. And as we finish up the show tonight, I want to talk about some of the things that Bill Schmidt mentioned during the winter meetings. Brenton Doyle, the topic came up to him about leading off. And I think all of us Rockies fans, or most of us Rockies fans, really like that idea. Despite the numbers didn't look pretty this past year, I believe in like 13 games he hit like 125 leading off. But I think majority of that was at the start of the season. But I think we like that idea, right, Tom, of Brenton Doyle leading off.
I absolutely love it because you want to, excuse me, you want to give your best players the most at bats. Obviously, you bat them in the top 2/3 of the lineup. If I had to, again, off the top of my head, I would love to see starting again. To your point, I believe, of course, the leadoff was early on when he was still trying to find his stride. I would love to go Doyle, Tovar, McMahon, Toglia, and then Nojo to round out the top five. That's what I would do. You got two righties leading off, then you, of course, you mix in the lefties, the two lefties going 3 and 5, and then you mix in the powerful switch here of Toglia in between them at the cleanup spot. Again, I think you and I comments about this last year, especially we started talking when Toglia went on his hot power streak, or I should say his power surge, you could say. Little pun there. I would love to see him back clean up. And again, this is hope. I know we all just have confidence that Nolan Jones can stay healthy and turn things around and be more like 2023 Nolan. So again, but like last year when he just looked lost at the plate, he was batting third. I think he was trying too much and he was forcing the issue, and pitchers are taking advantage of that. So I think keeping him down toward the end, toward the bottom of the top 2/3 will definitely, into the second third of the lineup will definitely take some pressure off him. But again, that's what I would do with the top five. But to Doyle, I love the idea of him leading off, and of course also. It was great. Also, they had a whole kind of a little segment talking about Tovar. It is great that not only did he win the Gold Glove, he's getting nationally recognized as one of the rising young stars. And if I had a ranking scheme right now, I would definitely put him probably right there at the edge of the top 10 shortstops in baseball for sure.
Yeah, and Bud Black talking about him, how he's going to be perennial all-star in the future. I agree with him. Tovar had a case this past year to be an all-star, especially late in the spring when he got hot. Of course, almost every single Rockies player had that really bad start at the start of the season, right? Offensively and pitching wise, other than Cal Quantrill, he was pretty good. But Tovar, man, I remember when he got called up, I was like, hey, Tovar could be a future, superstar. And the Rockies, they were saying the same thing. And now we're starting to see him grow in front of our eyes, and he's 23 years old now, right? And he still has several more years ahead of him. I mean, we have our shortstop now, Tom, and it's just crazy how you look at the NFL and you look at the Green Bay Packers. They had Favre, they went to Rodgers, and now Jordan Love. The Rockies, they know how to make shortstops. They made too low. Then they got Trevor Story, and then they now got Ezekiel Tovar. So the Rockies, they know how to do one thing right, and that's to make shortstops. But no, it's Tovar. He's going to be awesome, and I'm excited. And he's going to be probably, like you said, Tovar. I like him at this 2 hole. I really didn't get why there was sometimes this past year where he was hitting seventh or eighth, or I don't think he hit ninth. But Tovar is a number one, number two type of guy to lead off or hit second. So I agree. I like Brent Doyle hitting lead off. I'm okay with him being in the top three for sure. But one thing for sure is that we'd like to see Michael Toglia, especially what he did. Um, this past year. Now, again, the numbers, they could be better. The batting average, I think 230 ish in 2024 for Toglia. But from what we saw, we could use a guy that has power, and Toglia has that. And let's just say Doyle and Tovar get on base. Toglia has the chance to make it a 3-0 game, right out of the gate in the first inning. So have Toglia bat fourth or fifth, right? Now, for Chris Bryant, that was another conversation that was brought up at the winter meetings. One thing I will say, and I did talk to somebody about this yesterday, that I'm not upset about necessarily. It's just that I wouldn't have Bryant play that position as much, and that position would be, I believe it was right field, and I think they were talking about it. And Bill Schmidt mentioned how Chris Bryant would be playing. Was it? They're looking at 3 times a week in right field, roughly. I didn't like that. I feel like Chris should be more of a DH, and if you want to preserve his body, if you want to keep him healthy, you want to keep him off the field, keep him away from dangers that could harm his body, right? Because you look at his injury when he was in LA this past year, when he dove into the netting in Dodger Stadium in June, that banged him up, and that ultimately put him on the IL. If you're the Rockies, you got to play him as a DH. You don't want to risk him running into the wall in right field like he did in Toronto, or running into the netting in Dodger Stadium. You want to keep it and preserve his body. Where much rather, if he were to get injured, I'd be much more okay with him getting hit by a pitch or whatever and getting injured. But I don't know. 3 times a week is a little bit too much for me. Maybe once a week. Now, I think the purpose of them doing that makes sense, because the Rockies, they want to rest some of their players, McMahon, Tovar, Doyle, because those guys played a bunch of ball games, especially late in the season last year, and they needed some of the time off, and they were just playing every single day, right? Which is great, but at the end of the season, when you're tired, you're just tired, and some of these players get injured, and it carries over into the next season. And I think the Rockies are kind of doing that with Chris Bryant here, having him kind of do a bunch of roles, versatile, play first base, play right field, DH. Um, and I will say this, that I want to say that they also mentioned that from now on, Bryant is going to be the regular DH as he should, but he'll also be playing a little bit of right field and first base during the week. Again, I'm okay with it as long as it's not 3 times or 4 times a week, because Jordan Beck, he needs his playing time. Toglia needs to be playing at first base because he has a Gold Glove type of glove at first base. So I don't know. We'll see. But those were my thoughts on Bryant. And other than that, that was really the news for the Rockies out of camp. Nothing really huge. It's just more of stuff that we've talked about and stuff that we've guessed about on the show. So I don't know. Tell me any final thoughts as we wrap up tonight about Bryant, or Doyle or Tovar as we wrap up.
No, just on the Bryant thing. I know obviously everyone it'd be better off if we could just somehow cut him, but that's too much money still left on his contract that we can't just that I know Dick Montfort's not willing to just eat up and pay him not to play for us, whether it's at home on the couch in retirement or it's with another team, depending if somebody picks him up. Um, I know you want to minimize the amount of impact on those legs in that back, but you also don't want to take it away completely. So I understand why he would say, or what the tentative plan is, to still have him play in the field and then off the field. You got to just find the healthy balance, and just fingers crossed here, hopefully that he doesn't end up on the IL for a lengthy period of time and play less, only about 40, 50 games. So, again, this is we talk about the youth movement's going to take precedent, but again, you can't just not play him. So
Yeah.
it's the unfortunate truth.
Yeah, you have to play him. You're paying all that money, the highest money on the team. He's the highest paid player on the team, and now he's that veteran bat, right? And MLB Network, they put out this, the little graphic when they were talking to Bud Black during the winter meetings on MLB Network, and one of the top thing on the list was veteran bat. And I like how Bud Black says, well, actually, our veteran bat is Bryant. And, they don't need to go out and get a veteran bat because their veteran bat should be Chris Bryant. And I was thinking of this the other day. I'm not sure if they've talked to Chris Bryant about this. Maybe they have. But at some point, you have to, give him a warning shot. Like, hey, this is your last chance. Like, you are our veteran bat. If you get injured again, you might be heading out the door. I know, again, it's a lot of money, and Tom was talking about it. And he's your highest paid player. But if you were to cut a contract, it would be better to cut, McMahon's contract or trade him, because McMahon, his contract is ending in a couple years, where Bryant's contract, I believe it ends after 2028. Am I correct? I think it's 2028.
I'll check real fast. Just
It was a 7-year deal signed in 22, so it might be 2029. It's either 2028 or 2029.
because I don't recall there being any options. So
Yeah, no options. So and I don't believe there's no trade clause either. So um, so
it's real quick. It's
Yeah.
to 2028. So 2029, he's a free agent.
Okay. So he signed through 2028, and we're heading into 2025. So you still have 3 years left on that deal. And again, he's being paid a lot of money. And
I'll check. I'm checking the salary. It's
Yeah.
27 million for each of the next 4 years.
4 years. And again, that's that's a hunk of money. And so, and if the Rockies believe that they're close to a contention spot, and what they're saying is that once they get to that point, you got to spend some money on free agents to bring them over here, whether it's pitching, a bat. You got to spend money, but how can you spend money when you're already paying Chris Bryant? And see, the Rockies, in some ways, they're forced to have Bryant on their roster, if that makes sense, because it's almost like the Denver Broncos, right? They cut Russell Wilson, they're in cap Hades right now, right? And it's just crazy to see what they're doing. But with this contract, with still paying Russell Wilson, they can't go out and get free agents as much as they wish they could, right? Because they're paying all this money is allocated toward Russell Wilson. Now it's going to change over the next year or two, right? Where they are going to be able to get free agents. Same thing here goes with the Rockies. If they were to cut Chris Bryant right now, it would take a long time before they would be able to pay for or bring in a free agent. And see, that's the problem. Not a lot of free agents come to Colorado unless if it's a 1 year or 2 year deal. You're not going to go out and get a 5-year, 4-year deal off the free agent market. That's not what the Rockies do. They're a team that doesn't really do that, right? So you're kind of forced to play the card of Chris Bryant here, and you just have to cross your fingers that it works out. Now, again, unfortunately, over the last 3 seasons, it hasn't worked out. And your fingers are crossed that, hey, can this work out this year? And like I said, you want to put him in a position to where he can stay healthy, stay on the field constantly and consistently, and not have to go on the IL. Now, I guess if you want to look at the positive spin to it, whenever there's injuries, it gives somebody else more playing time. When Bryant was injured, over the last 3 years, a lot of the playing time went to either Toglia or Montero. Well, now Montero's out the door. He's actually off the team. I think he's playing international ball now. It gives younger players opportunity. And I think it actually was a blessing in disguise that Bryant got hurt this past year, because it gave the opportunity of Michael Toglia playing first base. And now we know who he is. He's our first baseman, right, of the future as of right now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Chris Bryant. But as of right now, according to Rockies manager Bud Black and Bill Schmidt, he's going to be kind of all over the place in 2025. Mix of a right fielder, first base, and DH, but I think it's primarily DH. And I would not be shocked. And I'd be pretty much expecting him to be our DH on opening day when the Rockies are playing the Rays at Hal. Is it Hal Steinbrenner Stadium? Is it Hal or whatever name it is? I know it's Steinbrenner Stadium.
George.
Okay. It's the father's. Okay, so it's the dad's name stadium. So that'll be interesting to see. And we were talking about it before the show tonight, how it's going to be weird to sing two. Really, the Rays are not playing a minor league stadium necessarily. It's a spring training facility, but it's weird to see, two teams being played in almost basically minor league stadiums. And I want to say Sacramento's stadium. It's a weird layout. I want to say the players' lockers are in center field. So they're going to have to walk from the dugout to center field to take a showers and whatever. It's just, that's going to be so weird for Oakland. Now they're no longer Oakland anymore. It's just the A's or Sacramento, however you call it. But just a weird situation. But anyways, that's really what went on in the winter meetings. Nothing much, just some news. So yeah, we hope you guys had a wonderful week of watching all that news. I know we did. Unfortunately, again, the Rockies, they didn't do well in the lottery, but hey, we're still getting a good pick. And of course, Thairo Estrada is coming to Colorado. We're curious and somewhat excited about that. See what he does here in Denver in 2025. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching tonight's edition of the Rockies Now podcast. We appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube or X, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, we appreciate you for listening and tuning in. And again, if you don't follow us on either of those platforms, we greatly appreciate it if you would go ahead and hit that follow button as well. Well, anyways, have a good night. On behalf of myself, Tom, and Adam, we would like to thank you so much for listening to this edition of the podcast. Have a good night, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.